Your garden is being eaten alive right now, and there is a very good chance that everything you have been buying to stop it, every bottle, every spray, every $18 jug of whatever they are pushing at the garden center this season, is making the problem worse. Not just ineffective, worse. I am going to show you proof of that in a few minutes. But first, let me tell you about the morning that changed how I think about pest control forever. I want you to like this video and subscribe right now before we go any further, because what I am about to share took me 3 years to compile, and I am giving it to you in the next 20 minutes for free. Hit that button. Now let us get into it. It was a June morning in Ohio, the kind of heat that gets into your shirt before 9 a.m. I was standing in a vegetable patch behind a white farmhouse outside Berlin in the heart of Holmes County, and I was looking at something that should not have been possible. Cabbages, rows of them, not one hole, not one chewed edge, not one sign of the cabbage worms that had turned my own garden into green lace just that morning before I drove out. I had left my house 2 hours earlier with plants that looked like someone had attacked them with scissors. And here I was, looking at perfect leaves like they had been grown under glass. The man walking beside me was Amish. His name was Eli Miller. He was in his 70s. He had been farming this same soil since he was a boy. And when I asked him what he was spraying on those cabbages, he laughed. Not a polite laugh, a genuine, deep laugh, like I had just asked him something that struck him as genuinely funny. He said, "Son, I have not sprayed anything from a bottle on this garden in over 40 years. I did not believe him. But then he walked me to a small wooden shelf inside his potting shed, and sitting on that shelf was a single glass jar, white powder inside. A label I recognized immediately because I had seen it in laundry rooms my entire life. Borax. 20 Mule Team Borax. The same box your grandmother kept next to the washing machine. Under $5 at any grocery store in America, and this man had been using it season after season to outperform every synthetic pesticide on the market. But here is where it gets interesting, and this is the part that kept me up at night for months after that visit. Because what Eli showed me that day was not just a folk remedy. It was not just one farmer's habit. It was a documented, government-approved, scientifically verified method that was actively removed from public knowledge, deliberately, systematically, and I can prove it. Stay with me, because the history of how this happened is almost unbelievable. Before we get there, I want to make sure you understand exactly what borax does, because most of the information you will find online about it is either wrong, incomplete, or just dangerous enough to make you give up before you see results. And giving up too early is exactly what the chemical companies are counting on. Borax is sodium borate. It is a naturally occurring mineral. It has been mined and used by humans for over 4,000 years. And what it does to insects is elegant in a way that no synthetic pesticide has ever matched. It disrupts digestive enzymes, specifically the enzymes that insects with exoskeletons use to process food. Ants, beetles, weevils, squash bugs, cabbage worms, earwigs. Their bodies physically cannot handle boron in any concentrated form. It shuts them down from the inside. Here is the part that changes everything. Your body can process it. My body can. Your dog's body can. Your tomato plants not only can handle it, they actually need it. Boron is an essential micronutrient for plants. It controls cell wall formation, sugar transport, and fruit set. Which means when you apply this correctly, you are not just eliminating the pests, you are feeding the plant at the same time. One substance, 2 jobs, and it costs less than a cup of coffee per application. Now, most people who try borax and fail are making one critical mistake, and I want to save you from that mistake right now, because it is the reason the few articles about this online give such bad results. They tell you to sprinkle it dry onto the soil. Do not do that. In high concentration, dry borax will burn roots and sterilize your soil biology. That is not the method. That is not even close to the method. The Amish method, the one Eli showed me, the one that has been running in Holmes County for over a century, treats borax as a delivery system, not a direct poison. The concentration matters enormously. The timing matters enormously. And there is one extra ingredient that almost nobody knows about from a 1941 USDA document I am going to name before this video is over, that makes the whole thing dramatically more effective. But before I give you that, I need to tell you about the part of this story that genuinely made me angry. Because this is not just about pest control. This is about something that was taken from you, and from your parents, and from their parents. In 1906, the United States Department of Agriculture published Farmers Bulletin No. 247. It listed borax solutions as the recommended treatment for over 30 common garden pests. This was not fringe science. This was the official recommendation of the federal government of the United States, distributed free to every county extension office in the country. It stayed in Extension Service literature through the 1940s. Farmers used it. It worked. Everyone knew about it. And then the war ended. Here is what happened after World War II that changed everything about how Americans managed their land. The chemical industry came home from the war sitting on a surplus of nerve agents that no longer had a military use. These were organophosphate compounds, extremely toxic, developed specifically to damage the nervous systems of human beings. And someone, somewhere, in a boardroom we will never have the minutes from, decided that the best peacetime use for these compounds was the American garden. By 1952, those agents had been rebranded as agricultural pesticides, and a coordinated campaign began, through lobbying, through advertising, through pressure on university extension programs, to remove every cheap homemade alternative from official literature. Not because the alternatives stopped working, because the alternatives could not be patented, because nobody can charge you 400% markup on a mineral that costs less than a postage stamp per application. Borax was one of the first to disappear. Farmers Bulletin No. 247 was quietly pulled. The follow-up publications stopped referencing it, and within one generation, the knowledge was effectively gone from mainstream American agriculture. The Amish never got that memo, and that is why, when I walked into Eli Miller's garden in the summer heat outside Berlin, Ohio, I was looking at something that most American gardeners have not seen in 70 years. A vegetable patch managed entirely without synthetic chemicals, perfectly healthy, producing better yields than the county average for organic operations, and costing almost nothing to protect. Now let me give you the actual method, because this is what you came for. The base formula that Eli gave me, and this is the one I want you to write down right now, is 2 level tablespoons of pure borax dissolved in 1 gallon of warm water with 1 teaspoon of sugar dissolved in first. The sugar is not decorative. The sugar is the mechanism. Insects are drawn to sweetness. They feed on the solution directly or carry it back to the colony, and the boron does the rest within 48 to 72 hours. You mix it in a clean plastic jug, shake until fully dissolved, then pour it into a spray bottle for foliage or a small watering can for soil application around the base of plants. But here is where most people stop, and they get partial results, and they think the method is inconsistent. The truth is that the timing of application is just as important as the formula itself, and the Amish use a 4-stage seasonal calendar that almost no one outside their community knows about. The first application goes down in late February to mid-March, depending on your zone. You want 3 consecutive days above 45 degrees. You want workable soil, not frozen, not waterlogged. And for this first application, you add 1 teaspoon of unscented liquid Castile soap to your gallon. Not dish soap, not laundry soap, Castile soap. The additives in anything else will damage your soil biology. The soap acts as a surfactant. Without it, the solution beads on the soil surface and runs off before it can penetrate. With it, it soaks down into the top layer where overwintering eggs and pupae are just starting to wake up. Apply it in a 3-foot radius around where you intend to plant, but keep it at least 12 inches back from established perennial roots. Boron accumulates. Annual vegetables handle a fresh, seasonal dose perfectly. Perennials, fruit trees, asparagus crowns can build up to toxic levels over multiple years if you push too close. The second application comes 4 to 6 weeks later, just before you transplant your warm season crops. You drop the concentration to 1 teaspoon per gallon for this one, and you focus it on the planting holes themselves. Pour half a cup of solution into each hole. Let it absorb for 10 minutes. Then set your transplant. What this creates is a hostile zone in the immediate root area where cutworms, wireworms, and root fly larvae cannot establish. The wilting and stunting that most gardeners blame on transplant shock is very often unseen larval damage in the root zone. This stops it before it starts. The third application is the one most people skip, and it is arguably the most important of the 4. In late June, when soil temperature at 2 inches has been above 70 degrees for at least 10 consecutive days, you apply a maintenance dose of 1 teaspoon per gallon broadcast lightly across the entire garden. This catches the second generation of soil-dwelling pests, the ones that hatched from eggs laid by the adults that survived your spring treatment. If you skip this application, you will see a resurgence in late July that will make you think the borax stopped working. It did not stop working. You stopped the calendar. The fourth application goes down after your first hard frost. 2 tablespoons per gallon worked into the bare soil with a hard rake to a depth of about 2 inches. This is your overwintering treatment. Squash bug eggs tucked into soil cracks. Cabbage looper pupa hibernating just below the surface. Cucumber beetle larvae waiting out the cold. This application breaks the life cycle so completely that by the 3rd year of consistent use, you will see 80 to 90% reduction in adult pest emergence the following spring. I have spoken with Amish gardeners in their 5th and 6th year of this protocol who cannot remember the last time they saw a squash bug. They say it the same way someone might say they cannot remember the last time their barn roof leaked. It has simply become a non-issue. Now I want to tell you about one specific case that I think about whenever someone tells me this cannot work at their scale. There is a farmer in Holmes County. I will call him Amish because I do not have his permission to use his real name, who took over his family vegetable operation in 1996. The farm had been in continuous cultivation since 1873. The Borax protocol had been in use since at least the 1930s. When Amish took over, he started keeping records. By 2010, those records showed cucurbit yields averaging 22% above the county organic average. Pest-related crop losses under 3% annually. 0 external pest control inputs of any kind, organic or synthetic, for 14 consecutive years. His total annual spend on pest management, including the borax, the soap, and the labor to apply it, was under $60. $60. to protect a market garden that grossed over $40,000 a year in produce sales at farmers markets in Columbus and Akron. That is the math the agricultural chemical industry does not want you to do. Now, I promised you something specific at the beginning of this video. I promised you a technique from a 1941 USDA document that almost no one alive today knows about. Here it is. The document is called Farmers Bulletin No. 1812. Title: Home Remedies for Garden Insects. Published by the United States Department of Agriculture in February of 1941. Removed from active extension circulation by 1955. I have a photocopy of the original on my desk as I record this. The relevant page describes what the authors called the Borax sugar trap, which is the cotton ball method I mentioned earlier. But there is one additional ingredient that the modern internet has completely forgotten: a teaspoon of apple cider vinegar per quart of solution. That is the missing piece. And here's why it matters so much. The vinegar does three things simultaneously. It accelerates the breakdown of the insect's exoskeleton, increasing absorption speed. It increases boron uptake into the digestive system. And it lures pest species that are not attracted to sugar alone, particularly fruit flies, vinegar flies, and the small black beetles that swarm late summer corn. The original bulletin listed effectiveness rates of 92 to 97% across the pest species tested. The full formula: 2 tablespoons of borax, 1 tablespoon of sugar, 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar, 1 gallon of warm water, mixed in that order, dissolved completely, applied as a foliar spray or soaked into cotton balls placed in shallow plastic lids along pest trails. For ants specifically, the cotton ball method is the one that eliminates entire colonies rather than just the scouts you can see. You place the soaked cotton balls in old yogurt lids along the active trail. You do not kill the ants you see. That is the single biggest mistake most people make with any ant bait. You want them to drink and carry it home. The queen gets it. The larvae get it. The colony collapses within 4 to 7 days. Eli's wife Mary treated a carpenter ant nest the previous spring using this exact method. Cost of treatment, by her calculation, 11 cents. For squash bugs, which I know is going to be the #1 comment below this video because squash bugs are the great defeat of the American home gardener, the approach is more involved and the timing is everything. Start with the fall overwintering treatment worked into the soil around where you grew or plan to grow cucurbits. Follow with a spring soil drench at 2 tablespoons per gallon, focused in a 2-foot radius around each planting hill. When the plants begin to vine in mid-June, spray 1 teaspoon per gallon directly onto the undersides of the leaves once a week for 3 weeks. The females lay their bronze egg clusters on those undersides. The boron disrupts the developing embryos. Eggs already laid will fail to hatch. Adults that contact treated foliage leave within hours and do not return. The squash bug problem that most gardeners consider essentially unsolvable becomes manageable in 1 season and effectively disappears by year 3. For Japanese beetles, which are devastating to roses and grapes, you mix 1 tablespoon of borax per gallon of water with 1 tablespoon of molasses. Spray it on affected foliage in the early morning before beetles become active. The molasses makes the solution slightly sticky. The beetles ingest it with the leaf material and they die within 24 to 36 hours. For cabbage worms and cabbage loopers, which destroy more brassica crops than any other pest in North America, you combine the spring soil drench with a dusting application. Mix dry borax 50-50 with finely ground wood ash. Apply it with a small flour sifter to the upper surfaces of your cabbage, broccoli, and kale leaves once a week, starting when the plants are 6 inches tall. Moths looking for places to lay eggs are repelled by the combination. Caterpillars that do hatch and begin to feed on dusted foliage die within 48 hours. And as a bonus, the wood ash washes into the soil as rain comes through, adding potassium and calcium. You are feeding the plant and protecting it in the same motion. That is how the Amish think. Every practice serves multiple purposes. Nothing is wasted. Now, I need to address the question I get more than any other, because if I do not, I will see it 100 times in the comments. Is borax safe for your beneficial insects, your bees, your earthworms, your ladybugs? Here is the careful, honest answer. At the concentrations I have described, borax in soil is not harmful to adult honeybees, because adult honeybees do not feed on soil and do not contact the treated zone in any meaningful way. The solution dries within hours of application and bonds to soil particles, becoming biologically unavailable to anything not actively burrowing through the root zone. Do not spray in the heat of the day when bees are actively foraging. Spray early morning or evening. A wet spray hitting a foraging bee can temporarily disrupt its ability to fly until it dries. That is the risk, and it is manageable. Earthworms are not significantly affected by boron concentrations below 10 parts per million in the soil. The applications I am describing produce concentrations of 2 to 4 parts per million in the top 3 inches, dropping to under 1 part per million below 6 inches. For reference, most Midwest agricultural soil naturally contains boron at 0.5 to 2 parts per million. You are adding a supplement that is barely above background levels. The Amish have been doing this on the same plots of land for over a century, and those plots produce some of the most robust earthworm populations and active soil microbiology of any farmland in North America. There is one critical warning I need to give you before we go any further, because this is where people make a catastrophic mistake. More is absolutely not better. 2 tablespoons per gallon is a ceiling, not a floor. If you double the concentration because you think it will work faster, you will burn roots and sterilize soil. You will spend the next 3 years trying to rebuild what you destroyed. The Amish did not arrive at 2 tablespoons by accident. They arrived at it through generations of observation. Trust the measurement. Also, beans are more sensitive to boron than other crops. For bean rows, cut the borax in half. Tomatoes, peppers, squash, cucumbers, and brassicas all tolerate the full ratio without issue. Do not apply this within 20 feet of a wellhead or natural water source. Do not use it on acid-loving plants like blueberries, azaleas, or rhododendrons. Store your mixed solutions in clearly labeled containers, never in old beverage bottles, and use them within 1 week of mixing. Now I want to come back to the history, because there is one more piece of this story that I think about every time I walk through a garden center and see the shelves of brightly colored bottles with the little skull on the label. In December of 1947, a Lancaster County agricultural extension agent named Robert Mellinger sat down with an Amish bishop named Elias Hostetler and spent days documenting everything the community knew about sodium borate use in the home and garden. Mellinger was thorough. His notes filled 47 pages of a leather-bound field journal. He documented 17 distinct uses, from ant control in the spring house, to a dusting powder for chicken mites, to the soil drench we have been discussing. He submitted his report to the Pennsylvania Department of Agriculture in March of 1948. The report was filed. It was never published. It was never distributed. We know it existed because a researcher at Penn State named Dorothy Kreider found a carbon copy in a file box in 1971 while working on her dissertation about traditional Pennsylvania German agricultural practices. She made photocopies. She tried to publish excerpts. She was told by her advisor that the material was, and I am quoting from a letter she preserved, not consistent with the current direction of the department. Her dissertation was approved only after she removed the chapter on borax entirely. The carbon copy of Mellinger's original report is still, as far as anyone knows, sitting in a box in a storage facility in Harrisburg. The photocopies Kreider made were donated to a small private archive in Goshen, Indiana, after her death in 2004. This is not folklore. This is documented, witnessed, recorded by a government employee, and then suppressed because the timing was inconvenient for an industry that was about to make billions of dollars. The first commercial formulation of malathion went on sale to consumers in 1956. By 1962, when Rachel Carson published Silent Spring, the synthetic pesticide industry was already worth more than $2 billion a year. And the machinery that protected that revenue was fully operational. Borax did not stand a chance against it. Not because it stopped working, but because nobody could build a quarterly earnings story around a mineral that costs $5 a box and lasts 3 seasons. What you have right now at the end of this video is something that was deliberately removed from public knowledge to protect someone else's profit. A complete, seasonally calibrated, generation-tested protocol for managing pests in any garden on any scale for under $60 a year. It was in government publications. It was used by farmers and homemakers across the country for over a generation. And then it quietly disappeared, page by page, edition by edition, until 2 generations of American gardeners grew up thinking the only option was to buy something in a plastic jug. You just got it back. Mix 2 tablespoons of borax with 1 teaspoon of sugar and 1 teaspoon of apple cider vinegar per gallon of warm water. Apply it on the calendar I described. Follow the concentrations. Respect the warnings. Give it a full season. And then come back here and tell me what happened in your garden. Because I read every comment, and I am putting together a follow-up video on the 3 toughest pests on this list based on exactly what you tell me. Squash bugs, cabbage worms, Japanese beetles, carpenter ants, whatever has been the bane of your summer. Tell me in the comments which pest has been giving you the worst trouble. Be specific. Your answer decides what I cover first. If this gave you something real today, something you can actually use tomorrow morning, subscribe and stay with me. Because this channel is not about one video. It is about recovering the practical knowledge that was systematically stripped out of American homes over the last 70 years. Next week, I'm going to show you the Amish method for keeping a root cellar at 38 degrees year-round without a single watt of electricity, using a technique from an 1893 Pennsylvania farming manual that has not been reprinted in over a century. You do not want to miss that one. I will see you there.